Good afternoon and welcome to our live panel of Is Owning a Business a Blessing or a Curse? We brought back some of our podcast guests today, not because they're thriving, but because they agreed to have a free lunch. I'm your host, Wayne Lawrence, and like many of these panelists, I'm also a business owner. And I've had and lived both sides of the blessing or curses, sometimes within the exact same week. The podcast is all about real talk, no fluff, no filters, just business owners sharing what it actually takes to build, sustain, and survive in this entrepreneurial roller coaster. Today, we're bringing that conversation to life with 6 former guests, people who've thrived, struggled, pivoted, and persevered. We'll talk wins, losses, economy, and yes, probably a few things that we just keep to our group chat. Whether you're a fellow entrepreneur, an aspiring business owner, or someone who simply wants to understand what it takes to build something from the ground up, this discussion will be for you. So let's dive in, get honest, and maybe even laugh a little about how chaotic and beautiful this ride can be. Okay? So please, I'm going to ask everyone to give our panel applause, and I'm going to introduce them after that, all right? So I'd like to introduce the panel now, and the first person, and it was our very first episode. I'm actually surprised you came back, Tawana, after. You walked out and said, never again am I coming to do this again. And here you are. Tawana Johnson owns UNI Professional Notary Services. Opening over 4 years ago, UNI offers notary services, closes on loan documents, and assists immigrants with getting proper documentation. Tawana, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to come back to you with the question. We also have Erica Jurasic. Took me 6 months to get that. You don't realize that, all right? From CLE Juice Box. It's a drive-through juicery which offers fresh, cold, pressed juice. Although the juice is primary product, CLE also makes vegan and gluten-free based foods. The entire menu is plant-based, and we actually have some samples here of her product. So some in the back, too, so if they want to grab it later. Erica, thank you for being here as well. All right. Episode 8, Chuck Glover from Lake Management Incorporated, LMI Group. LMI is an association management company. For over 27 years, LMI has worked with condominiums, homeowner associations, and planned unit developments. LMI has a maintenance division which handles daily tasks and construction projects, including remodeling. Chuck also owns a company called Pine Cone Mulch used in landscaping, so he dabbles in multiple businesses. We were actually just talking about that Pine Cone business. Most of it comes up from the south, which he'll tell you about, and it's better than mulch. Hopefully no one is watching that sells mulch at this point. But you can always sponsor if you are. Episode 12, Andy Fiffick. Rad Air Complete Car Care. Some people call it Raid Air Complete Car Care, and Andy does not care what you call it. He wants you to call it Great Car Care, period. In 1995, Raid Air started in servicing radiators and air conditioners. And actually, that's how it became Raid and Rad, because some people called them Radiator, right?
Actually, 1975.
1975, okay. Thanks, appreciate that. You were the only one that would have known that. No, I'm just kidding. Fast forward, and now there are 11 franchises. I had 10. They just added a new one. We're going to hear a little bit about that. With the exception of bodywork, they just do just about everything. Great place to take the car. Radar has become the go-to guy that and working on cars that nobody else wants to fix. So they've done really good about what they've done. All right. Dan Tingler from Cool Guys Floors and More. In addition to flooring, Dan, you wave your hand.
Right here.
Yeah, in addition to flooring, Cool Guys offers other solutions to homeowners such as carpentry, electrical, plumbing, and general contracting services. He calls it the Dan-do list versus the honey-do list. Right? And then last but not least, the net render. DAR Public Relations. Now, we did find out on the podcast that A stands for Avis. Not very many people knew that, but we uncovered that, and it's been all over social media now. Starting as a public relations firm for over 40 years ago, DAR has grown into an integrated marketing agency, which includes PR, marketing, advertising, and event planning. Thank all of you for being here. We are about to get started now. Danette, you're first. All right. So when we had our podcast, we had a topic about networking. That we had a real nice conversation about that, and as a part of that, you said that networking, success starts with networking, I believe you said, right? In order to be a small business owner or any business owner, you got to be able to network. In your answer, you actually said, quote, I emphatically state that there is no substitute to networking. You must have it in your arsenal. And I think that people agree that. So now, Danette, you have a room full of people. You have people watching, many of which are meeting each other for the first time. Many are facing awkward moments in terms of what to do right now. What advice would you give these folks on how best to network?
Thank you. And thank you for having me here. Networking needs to be natural. And if it means you have to practice before you leave home so that you have a question or something that's going to open the door or open a conversation, but it's important that you prepare from a networking perspective and that it becomes second nature. And oftentimes it's not as easy because some people are very shy, but you can't be shy in business. In business, it becomes critical that you talk to everyone. So I tell people all the time, my hat, my ears, everything is thinking and working business all the time. So it's a 24/7 business, and you have to be prepared because you don't know where your next opportunity is going to come from. You don't know who you're sitting next to. You don't know who you just crossed the street and shook your head and said hi to. That could be your next customer. So I really have to emphasize the importance of networking because it will make you a star.
Good. All right. Thank you. And Danette actually came here from another event, so she's a epitome of networking and doing things. And you know, when she said that you never know who you're going to be sitting next to, that is absolutely true. There are people in this room, Ian, who I met at an event, and now we're doing things together. So it's one of those things where you just strike up a conversation, and I know it's hard. So if you can't do it, bring a networking buddy with you who knows how to introduce and start, because that's the way it starts, is just being able. So I do have a follow-up question, though. Old school networking is when we used to go to events like this, you pass out cards. I'm not even sure that everyone even has business cards anymore, but you pass out cards, you shake hands, you introduce yourself. How do you do it within the framework now of meeting people through Zoom and social media and having meetings like that?
Well, ironically, I just left an event, and yes, I did pass out cards. In this instance, I passed out flyers to certain people about some events that I'm planning. But I noted that several people had electronic digital cards. And so it was the digital cards that they gave to me. And I'm finding that that's happening more and more. It's something that actually I need to do within my own operation. As of an event that we did last week, I said, oh my goodness, we need to have our digital cards prepared immediately. So in today's marketplace, you have to change with the times. So digital marketing becomes critical, as well as the ability to be able to utilize your networks, things like the social media, to be able to make connections, and don't be afraid to reach out. Typically, you would not necessarily just talk to a stranger if you came across their picture or their information. But in today's marketplace, it's an open opportunity for you to reach out and introduce yourself and start that networking and development of a business relationship.
Okay, thank you. Tawana, our first episode. And I remember we talked about you working in a dental office. And during that period of time, you started working out of your home, of course, because it was COVID. So you opened up your company during COVID and the pandemic, and you were able to work out of your home. But just by happenstance, I guess, you were on a plane ride, and you started talking to someone on that plane, and you made the comment that you were tired, you didn't want to talk to them, and we all been there before, but they just, of course, they just chatter. But that plane ride became very important to you because it set the tone for your business, and they introduced you to other things such as closing documents, et cetera. So now, let's fast forward from there. Who do you turn to when you're seeking advice on how to improve your company? Of course, unless you've got a bunch of frequent flyer miles, and that's how you do it. So go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I basically, I turn to other notaries and other people that's doing the same thing that I'm doing. Basically, as Danette said, that we have to network. So I kind of put myself out there to network with different title companies, real estate agents, brokers. So I network myself as well as with other notary publics and anyone that is also state official that I can work with.
Okay. And I remember you also had, there were two of you and someone else. Is it still just two of you?
Yep, she's there.
Okay, good. Oh, hey, second person. We didn't meet you before. So good. And I remember at the time you were excited because you were talking about the growth and strength of the company at that time. Is it still going like that, or has things slowed down a little bit? So, yeah.
No, it's growing very well.
Okay,
very
good.
well.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. And
absolutely.
what's driving that growth at this point?
The economy. You know, everyone is buying houses. Everyone is, needing the things that our services that we have for services. So, yeah, I mean, they're calling, consistently. So,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
Chuck Glover. We talked about family being in the business, and I apologize because family members are probably watching right now. So, at the time, you had 18 employees, and I believe 3 family members, and we were talking about third generation. It was around those numbers, correct, that you had involved in the business. In the episode, we delved into how challenging it is to sort of leave work and not bring it home, at dinner and things, but you guys are on call 24/7. So, someone has to run out, they come back in, they're not happy, they share with everyone, and now that family time has become work. How have they evolved since then, one? And then as you start to look at your succession plan, how do you manage that part of it now? What are you thinking at this point? Yep.
So those are two very different questions.
Okay, yeah.
The first question is, we have for conversation at home, and how do you turn off, right? Everybody needs a few minutes. Well, we just have to make a straight concerted effort to shut it off. But part of it is you don't think about that a normal family, you come home from your own job and the rest of the family doesn't know about it and you talk about it, right? And that's your release. That's your how you let things go. Well, we still have to provide that for each other, but it needs to be a very structured way. And it's almost like up here at the panel, it's like, time out, you get your 5 minutes, you're done. The problem is sometimes the events are quite difficult or very, very impactful. So the one daughter who's an association manager, she has a lot of new experiences taking care of association management on her own, and she's 28 now. Sorry, Alexa. And so she comes home with new experiences, and she does need to talk about that and teach her as a lady and as a professional, and those changes cross. But we worked very, very hard since our podcast to make sure that we shut it down and have actual family time.
Okay, good. And do you have anyone that you're almost ready to hand over the keys to for the shop?
No. We're working through
That's
that,
a
but
hard
it's
no.
a while.
That's a hard no. All right, thanks, Chuck. Erica. Erica owns Cleveland Juice Box, and really interesting story. I remember that you started with, I think you were making juices, and you had your reasoning behind in terms of being health conscious and those things. You sent some to your husband's work to kind of give out, and they enjoyed it, and that led to a trailer in which you started selling out of a trailer, and then that led to a brick and mortar store. So, by the way, her store is in Mentor, on Mentor Avenue, if you go that way. And actually, I went by there, and it's really cool how you did the patio and mannequin and things like that. So, yeah, okay. So the one thing that I really took away from my conversation with Erica is that she's really into social media. I mean, if you follow her and you follow CLE Juice Box, you see them having fun, you see them doing a lot of things, and even personally with your running and stuff like that. So now social media is changing just a little bit. It's just not putting things on Facebook so people see, because people are scrolling as fast as they can to get to something else. How are you using? Are there any new apps, or how are you creating a following using what's currently out there and being different from everyone else?
In terms of being different, we act very unconventional. We are very silly. We try to put humor into our social media. I'll be honest, I don't utilize the a lot of the new apps that you can use, like CapCut, to make really cool videos and stuff. I'm just learning with that, but I think the key to social media is to make it interesting and innovative, and maybe provide a story in some aspect, a storytelling aspect, rather than just spewing factual information. I mean, there's a place for that too, but
Okay.
just to garner people's attention.
Okay. And you haven't used any of the new stuff like that, because I know on Facebook now, everyone probably does. You get all these things, brave.co or all these other things. When you create your own commercial, you could create this, you could create a plan. Are you using any of those things? Or?
Not
Okay.
not that much, but that's a job within your job.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. We're going to touch on that a little bit later. Dan Tingler. We were talking about subcontractors, 1099 employees, and you made a point at the time of sharing just how you spend so much time on site with the customer because you want to make sure it's done perfectly with your contractors. And I remember we had discussion about working on your business versus in your business. Because if you're working in your business every day, you're never working on your business, which means it really limits the growth. So now, what challenges are you facing? First of all, are you still doing that? And secondly, what challenges are you facing, if any, making sure that you maintain those good contractors and you're doing it the way you would like to do it? So you could carve out the time.
Okay. So, yes, I'm still doing the same thing. I'm both. And trying to find the right people is still difficult. Finding good tradesmen is very hard. If they're not already established within a foundation, finding those that are looking for someone new is pretty difficult. I have given opportunities, and I don't let them know that I'm stopping in. And, I'm catching guys. For instance, one gentleman tried to steal padding, use old padding on a customer's job. But if I didn't make that stop in and see what was happening, I would have never known. And that's what's happening out there is if you're not getting out on those job sites and seeing for yourself what's going on as an owner and being part of all of that, then I would have never caught that. Somebody would have gotten taken advantage of. So I think it's very important to not only be on one side of it, you got to be on the other side. You have to be involved because even though you feel you can trust an employee or a subcontractor, you never really know until you see it with your own eyes.
Sure. Yeah. Is there anybody else on the panel who has kind of addressed that from working on your business versus in? Because it's so hard to get away from day-to-day things, but you can't build revenue, relationships, and things like that many times if you don't. So anybody else facing that and was able to walk away from day-to-day in a sense and look at more of the big picture?
I can add just a
Yeah.
small comment to that. On an annual basis, particularly at the beginning of the year, I try to set aside a time, and usually it's a long weekend to go away, and I go away to a hotel and away from my office for the whole purpose of focus and planning on the new year ahead. And I came up with the idea after having this conversation about a need for a vacation, except I knew it really wasn't going to be a vacation because I needed to work on the business. And over the years, I found that time where I'm able to steal away completely away from everything, no phone calls, no family, nothing, but just focus. And I go there with a stack of papers, and for weeks I'm putting things aside that are going to be a part of that planning process. And it has been very valuable over the years.
Okay. What about you, Chuck? Because you use contractors as well, too, and you can't be in two places at the same time, especially with the volume of work you guys are doing. Yeah.
So to stay working on the business, I actually looked at what I was doing on a daily basis. And we all call it getting it off your plate, right? Or bringing it on your plate. The other word I like to think about when I'm looking at something that showed up on my desk to take care of is me taking care of this item an enabling issue? Am I enabling an employee or am I empowering the employee?
Okay.
So I actually found there's so many little things I was doing. I was like, oh, I'll just grab that one thing real quick. And it takes 10 seconds out of my day. But when you do that 100 times,
Yeah.
it's different. So I have a concerted focus on everything that's coming on my desk. That's my goal this year, 25. And I've already made huge progress in there. And then, like you were talking about with networking, if you're not networking, you're not going to grow. You're not
Yeah.
going to do anything. And then they hit down here with our Ohio Pine Straw. Two people were talking to me about it just that second, just in networking. It just happened. So you have to be ready. But that's how we look at it.
All right, Andy, buddy. Yep. You want to answer?
Well,
that?
I was
Yeah.
going to have a comment on that.
Okay, go.
That's really where our franchise model works perfectly fine for this, because our franchisees have more to lose than we do, and they're ones on site every day being my eyes and ears, on the business. It's because it's their business. So we just have to watch the franchisee, and they're watching what's going on every day for us. So it's the way Bill and I separated ourselves, and we could work on the business model every day that way.
Okay. Andy, so when we talked last time about the franchise model and things, we got into a conversation about COVID and how at that time it was challenging to get parts, the supply chain was delayed, maybe prices were going up and those type of things. Let's fast forward to today, where now we have tariffs, we have inflation, we have a lot of different things. How has that affected your business, and how will you, and depending on how that's affected, how will you communicate that to the customer? Do you see price increases or anything like that?
Oh gosh, COVID has affected everything, but in our business, the car prices gone through the roof. Everything has gone through the roof. You look at eggs, for instance, but but car prices have gone up so much that the average car today is roughly $48,000 to $50,000. The average car payment is $850 to $1,100 for 5 years now. So most people have decided that keeping the car they have and repairing it is actually a much better buy. So if you have a car that's somewhere around 8-10 years old, it's paid for. If it needs $2,000-3,000 worth of work, that's only 3 brand new car payments. So our business is actually staying very active because most people are going to fix that car and keep it. The average car on the road today is roughly 13 years old. So if you think about it, for every new car being sold today, there's a 25 or 26-year-old car on the road. So a 10-year-old car is not an old car anymore. In my day, a 10-year-old car was really an old car, but I'm an old guy. But a 10-year-old car back in the 60s was rusted apart. A 10-year-old car today does not rust. They're there. And if you look at the new Ford pickup trucks, all aluminum, that vehicle is going to be on the road 20 years and still look like brand new. So they do cost a lot more money, but they are lasting much longer. The service intervals are much longer, but they do require some maintenance. Just a little bit of advice to everybody out there: check your oil. I mean, the oil change intervals are anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000 miles. They will tell you that. But they're supposed to tell you to check your oil levels. About 50% of the major repairs we're doing on vehicles today are because there is no oil in the car when they get to our shop. We are doing $2,000 and $3,000 worth of repairs to engines because there is no oil in the engine. So for a $5 investment of putting a quart of oil in your car, you could save yourself $2,000, $3,000 worth of repairs. But the price of everything has gone up, no doubt about it. So there's nothing we could do about that. As far as tariffs go, I just had this question asked to me probably 3 times in the last month on different venues I've been at. No parts suppliers told us there's been a price increase because of tariffs yet. I believe all the parts that's been in the supply chain have been here for a while, so they have not been offloaded yet. The stuff that's going to be coming, we kind of expect we're going to see a price increase coming, but we have not seen it. Now, there are, I'm sure, some parts that come through the dealership network that we have to buy. There's probably been some price increases there, but it's on stuff that we don't buy every day. But brake pads, shoes, wiper blades, things like that, we have not seen any prices yet.
Okay. Dan, what about you? Are you seeing any price increases come your way?
Yes.
Okay, and how are you managing it? You eating that, or you got to share that with the customer?
No, I share it with the customer.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely share that with the customer. I'm not eating it.
Yeah, I'm with you. You have to. You have to. Does that worry you a little bit, or so?
No,
how
it
you feel
don't
about
worry
that?
me because everyone's aware of it, so they know it's going to happen in some part of the industries.
Okay. So, Erica, with your juice business, that's one of those things where you even mentioned in the podcast that it was a little bit of a premium because you guys make it fresh and with the right I guess nutrients and the products, et cetera. So when the economy starts to falter a little bit, people pull back on that discretionary income and spending that stuff. Are you starting to see that affect your business at all?
We have a really core group of customers, and we really haven't seen it affect them because it's part of their lifestyle. What we do is part of their lifestyle.
Okay, so they've kind of budgeted for it in a sense, or
Yes, and from the perspective of taking care of your health, pay now by eating well or in whole foods, or pay later in the form of medical bills and pharmaceuticals.
Okay. And then I just wanted a follow-up question for you. You had mentioned that you and Bill brought in this 11th franchise to the system. Borrowing costs are high. They just are. And we're not seeing interest rates come down, a lot of different things. Has the decrease in getting access to capital, with that decreasing, has that affected people looking at things like franchises? Because you got to have the investment dollars to put into it, and a lot of times people will finance that purchase as a business. So what are you seeing, Andy, in terms of that?
There's no doubt that has slowed that down. In our opinion, it has kept us from probably getting 2 or 3 more locations because of that.
Okay, gotcha. All right. And so are you thinking about maybe self-funding it or holding it at the time?
Actually, it's no secret. We're looking at opening maybe a couple company stores, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so what we're going to do is I've got a couple questions for the panel. I just want you to raise your hand or nod or whatever, and then we're going to dive into a little bit deeper. So has anyone seen customer behavior shift in response to the economy at all? Anybody? Well, we just asked you, and you said you've got it following. But anybody seen any customer behavior shift?
Yeah, there's no doubt. We'll get a client in that'll need $2,000-$3,000 worth. Unfortunately, most clients do not follow their maintenance schedule on their vehicle. If you followed your,
I think you're scaring them, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one takeaway.
If you followed your maintenance schedule on your vehicle, the vehicle could last 200,000-300,000 miles easy. But most people do not do that, so they wait till it's broken, and then you bring it in, and it's like, okay, well, I need brakes, but I also got a broken shock, and I need tires, and and it needs a few maintenance things. So, let's say the bill is $3,000. Well, I can only afford to do $1,000 of it, and then I got a budget for the rest. So, we are seeing quite a bit of that. It's going to be delayed maintenance, is what we're seeing on it, so people will have to budget for that. So that has been happening a little bit more often because consumer debt's high, credit card debt is high.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
In professional services, what I'm seeing is a requirement to educate our clients. And education at this point is preparing them for the fact that there are going to be changes in budgeting. And so let's just take a major event. The event that was $150,000 or the event that was $200,000 in 2019 could easily have increased by 25, 35, or even 50%. And so you have to be able to prepare your customer for that and help them to understand that the suppliers that are providing those services, all of their costs have increased, and in some instances, their costs may have even increased 50%. And so that's not something that they can now say, okay, well, we're going to give you the same price that we gave you last year. They can't. And so we have always tried to work with a lot of local and small business owners throughout the country wherever we do work, but that doesn't change the fact that their costs have increased. And as their costs increase, the client must be prepared for the fact that those budgets that were in place previously are no longer going to be acceptable.
Okay. Tawana, since we last spoke, is there something that you wish you would have done differently since we last spoke, or is there something that really you did well that you want to share with everyone that really helped your business?
I'm going to say something I did well.
Okay.
I just sat here and just waited for the economy to pick back up. However, now since a lot of things have changed with our immigration, my business has increased a lot because, as we spoke before on the podcast with the apostees, there's a lot of them that need paperwork and documents from their countries. So that has really elevated the business a little bit more.
Okay.
So,
Chuck, let's go back to this financing thing because you're right in the middle of it with remodeling and things like that. How's that affecting your business with consumers determining whether or not they're going to take on that project?
So we have seen some decrease in projects. Part of it is financial, but I'm actually going to switch my answer to a different thing. So in managing associations, condominium and homeowners and whatnot, you have an assessment that they pay every month or a maintenance fee. What's happening is that's the most important payment they make aside from their mortgage payment. But taking care of an association brings in all the trades and all the construction and all the price increases that go with it. And so we have to manage all of that and try and keep the maintenance fee down, but yet we have to maintain the property so that their values are there so when they sell, they can get their money. And so that's become a very daily grind on cost because, as we're all aware, if you get your prices too low, you just don't want to do the work, right?
Yeah.
It also affects employees because you have to increase employee pay. You know, we saw a $10 an hour increase from COVID. And everybody jumped on the COVID bandwagon. I'm digressing a second, but sales. Oh, COVID, well, we got to raise the price, right? Well, prices did go up, but then they stayed with it. The same thing's going to happen with the tariffs. Whether it goes up or not, everyone's going to sell their jobs for more because of tariff. And the average consumer doesn't know. So we have to integrate all of that on a daily basis, and it's extremely difficult.
You know what I'm finding out too is that, like in my business and industry, the operators who were not very good at what they were doing are no longer operating. And that's just the truth of it. So you really, if you're in business, you really have to navigate to someone or learn from them or find a mentor or just better understand how to operate your business because it's so challenging. And then there's companies that are for sale right now. And I know you and I dabble in a couple other different things, but it's one of those things where you just have to be a strong operator because as times get really bad, you're going to have even tougher time than someone else in a sense. Dan, question for you. All right. So I remember one of our conversations was about partnership, having a partner in the business. And at that point, I think you said
The hard no.
hard no. Yeah.
Hard no.
Yeah, you may have said something else, but I can't say it on a live podcast.
Right?
Yeah, it may have been, it was close to that, but it wasn't that. But anyway, and you did that because you ran into some problems and things like that. You know, you were doing all the work, and the other person wanted to be involved from the standpoint of just talking about being an owner. All right, and it wasn't fair at the time. So there are many people who have partners or think about having a partner, and it could be for financial reasons. What advice would you give them in terms of what to expect from that partnership? And in full disclosure, I'll say I have a partner in the audience right now who I was partnered with on a business years and years ago. And, you know, and even though that business didn't go as well as we had hoped, we are still best friends now because we had that strong foundation to walk through it, talk through it, and figure out what we need to do and bust our butts to try to do what we can. So what do you tell them?
So I would say the same thing. Get that foundation set up legally. If there's nothing to hide, then go talk to a lawyer, have them draw it up legally. That way your friendship can continue afterwards like yours did. Where when I entered and I was young and naive and excited and never thought to establish those boundaries and those guidelines. So I always tell young people or anyone, if you're going into a partnership, set those boundaries, you know, and then get them in writing, sit down with a lawyer, and go the right way with it.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And please, if you're really ever thinking about getting in business and you want a partnership, friendship is friendship. But when it comes down to it and you can't make payroll, it's Wednesday, and you can't make payroll on Friday, it's a totally different thing because now you're doing cash calls and you're trying to get people to put money in. You know, I had a partnership with a guy, another guy that we had a franchise system. And in 2008, everybody remember that time, right? Everything went to hell, including our business at the time. Well, as things started going poorly, you know, he got going out. So the point is, you never know how that friend is, what's going to happen, how that friend is going to react to challenging times, and that friendship will really be tested. So just want to throw that out to you if you're thinking about it. Now, that doesn't mean get on the phone and cancel what you're trying to do right now. It just means that you need to sit down and work through it and make sure everyone's clear on what they do. Andy, what is your biggest concern looking ahead in 2026? So finishing this year up and going to 2020, what kind of keeps you up at night?
Well, that's
That question?
That's kind of, nothing really keeps me up at night. I mean, I look as change as a challenge. So anything that comes my way, I just look to adapt and overcome. So nothing really keeps me up. I just I get up every day and go, what's new, what's exciting, and how am I going to tackle it? Thank God I think Bill's the same way. We probably talk 10 times a day and just what's new, what's exciting, what can we do different, what can we do better, how can we make our organization better every single day, and so nothing really keeps me up at night.
Okay.
Probably the only one is if we ever disappoint a client. It really upsets me that we disappoint a client, and how we could do that with all the checks and balances we have in place. But it happens, and it turns out almost every single time it was lack of communication at some level. And I still take that personally. We probably still did everything right, but the client just simply didn't understand what we were trying to tell them. And it's usually, and I hate to say it this way, but it's usually on the client's part that we did everything in our power to explain it to them. They just simply didn't understand it. We just had one other day. We did a bunch of work on the car. A week later, the differential went out in the gentleman's truck, and the differential blew out. We did a power brake booster and repaired an oil leak on the front of the vehicle. The rear end went out a week later, and he came in really hot-headed. What did you do to my truck? By the time we got done with it, he was thanking us for fixing the rear end. But I mean, he went off on us really bad. I was really upset over it that he was that mad at us. Could we have done anything different? No. But it did upset me because it happened on a Friday, and I was upset about it all weekend long. So I guess I will correct my answer.
there you go.
But yeah, if we disappoint a client,
You got there.
I really take it to heart. Yeah.
And Andy, you really are scaring people about these oil changes. I'm telling you, man. I mean, I see people looking at you every time you mention it. They're thinking, oil change? You're supposed to change that oil? I didn't know that. So
just a preference.
And by the way, Bill's in the audience if you want to go talk to him later and set something up.
Just as a reference, it is not abnormal for a car to burn up to a quart of oil every 1,000 miles. So if you go 5,000 miles, you could literally be down 5 quarts of oil, would not be abnormal. And if your car only holds 5 quarts of oil, guess what? You have nothing left. So yeah, and there's no warning before it starts doing damage.
So Erica, you I remember when we spoke that you were talking about not expanding and going to stores and different things like that. So what does success look like for you going forward? I mean, how would you define your success? Because only you could define it.
Well, to continue to grow the business, there's definitely still room for growth as far as how many throughput, the amount of people that come through the drive-through every day. We could still grow in that aspect, and there's other avenues of whether it be catering or things of that nature that you could. Even a passive form of income through some of our products, because we do vegan and gluten-free food. So we make like a not chicken nugget. We make burgers. So that could even be a passive income for me.
Okay. So you're expanding your menu too to just drive in extra revenue as well?
If it's up here, it's gonna come out of our.
All right, good. So, Danette, you we talked a little bit about this on the podcast. Your firm, your firm is titled DAR Public Relations. and Danette's been doing this for over 40 years. And so, what does your future look like? I mean, what's your out? What is your session? What do you do?
Well, clearly after 40 years, you have to take that step back and take a look. And even today, I'm still surprised at 40 years. But time has a way of flying. But I'm very happy about the major opportunities that have been afforded to us over this 40-year period. As I prepare to ultimately downsize and obviously remove myself as the owner of the company, maybe sell the company or whatever the case might be at some point, that is a preparation process as well. And in terms of, at a minimum, retirement of some sort. Obviously, I could work forever as a small business person, but at some point it's time to slow down. And so I'm looking and investigating that. But in the meantime, I've had a chance to look at some major opportunities that we've had over the years. And honestly, I would like to recreate those kinds of opportunities again. That there have been some opportunities that if I could do it 3 or 4 more times, I would love to do it. And so that's what I'm looking at, trying to find the opportunity to do some major projects on a whole nother plane in terms of the work that we do, but it takes us to a new level and takes us to a new place where we can really have a different plane in terms of what the playing field might look like. And for me, that would be a perfect way to wrap up my career at some point, because obviously I am not planning to work 50 or 60 years. So, so it is a different time and a different place. I'm still enjoying everything that I do. I'm happy that I have been able to sustain myself for the 40 plus years, but reality is that at some point retirement does need to take place.
Okay, good. So I'm certainly I'm aware of the time, so we're gonna give a couple more questions to make sure, because I know people are very anxious to get back to their offices and things that they need to do this afternoon. So now someone's saying no. Do we have a part 2? All right, we're gonna take a short break and we'll be back in a moment. So Dan, all right, so let's go back to, I remember part of your story too was, you were 13, 14 years old, and you were working in flooring and contracting, all these different things, and you decided that this is a route you wanted to go in. So let's fast forward to today. You don't own your company. You're still working for someone else doing that. Would you start a company today?
Yes.
And what would you do similar or differently?
I would do the same thing I'm doing now. I can't see anything different. I wake up, I thank God, and I meet new people every day. I have a talent that He's gifted me with that I'm able to, pass on. But I would be more aware of, some customers that you just need to walk away from. That's about the only thing I would change.
Has everyone or anyone had to walk away from a customer? Anyone out there had to walk away from a customer, or make sure you really set the expectation? It's one of those things where, did anyone raise their hand up here? Oh, tell us about it. You don't have to say the customer. I wouldn't advise that, but
I think that's everyone.
Okay.
Because, sometimes you can't please everyone, in what you do. However, you have to set boundaries and standards of what your professionalism is and what your standard is for your company. And if you're giving off that professionalism all the time, no matter if they're not satisfied or not, we just cannot please you. So I'm like you, I wouldn't change anything. So.
Okay. Anybody else in terms of with their customers? Go ahead.
I would say this, my philosophy has changed in the sense that if I have this feeling that it's not going to be a positive experience, then we would probably finish the project. But then on the next go round, if it's a situation of bidding or deciding if we want to work with that person in the future, I most likely would not. Because I believe at this point in time, it's just not worth it for somebody to give you a headache. Life is too short, and because life is short, we need to have as many positive and pleasant days as possible. Mm-hmm. And so it's real easy for me to be able to point out those kinds of individuals. And I say to my team, when they're out, for example, trying to secure vendors, when they're trying to secure suppliers, hires for us. And we were hiring a temporary agency, and I said to somebody, okay, we need to find a temporary agency in San Antonio. But I needed to be sure that this particular temp agency who was going to be supplying our on-the-ground workers had the right attitude about what we were doing. Because typically they'll just give you anybody. They'll say, oh, this is all you need, and they'll start sending you these resumes, and then the people that come just are not even close to what I need. And so I set these very, very high standards, and I just can't have anybody on the job that's just there because they need to make a few pennies for a day. It doesn't work like that. You are representing my company and my team, and you have to have very, very high standards. So I say all that to say you have and as an entrepreneur, you have that opportunity. You have that option to decide whether you want to accept that client or accept that vendor on the next go round. And I believe in making those decisions.
Okay. Great answer. Go ahead.
Our rule of thumb is if it sacrifices the operation as a whole, then we probably can't take on that customer or that particular job. So
Okay.
you have to know your limits.
Yeah.
We're a small business, small manpower, small footprint. So yeah.
Okay. Chuck?
This won't be a popular comment. Sorry. You got to do the same thing with employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very selective. What is it? Quick to fire, slow to hire, or is it the other way? But you have to be really careful with that. And I also think that you're going to miss something in the values of your company and what you're trying to do if you're not firing customers or not hiring customers. So
Yep.
there's something missing if you're saying yes
Okay.
to everything.
Good. All right, let's get one final question here because I'm really this was brought up not long ago, and some of you are of course you don't have any other employees or things like that, but you do have contractors. How many have to sacrifice paying themselves to pay their employees and contractors? Anybody? Used to? Okay. All right. So really, as you start to develop and because we talked a lot about putting your company in a good financial position so you can weather those storms or whatever. But some companies that are just a few years old can't weather the storm. So that's just kind of the reality of owning your own business, that there's going to be some personal sacrifices, involved. Now, they asked me not to do this, but I'm going to do it before we go anyway. Who in the audience own their own business? Oh, wow. Quite a few. I'll just say it. Yeah, maybe 35%. And out of that 35%, how many of you have been in business for over 5 years? Oh, okay. How many over 10 years? Okay. And then 20? Couple over 20 years. Okay. Wow. Hey, listen, get over 10 years, all right? Once you it doesn't get easier because things come up in cycles and decades, but just do what you have to do, work hard, and you should never make an excuse. We talk about on the show about your business because at the end of the day, the only person that owns it is you. Nobody else owns it. So those who are listening, those who are watching, and those who are thinking about getting into a business, just understand at the end of the day, you are going to be held responsible for yourself. You're the only one that can motivate yourself, and you're the one that's going to have to make it happen. So with that said, closing comments. Thank you all for being here today, and a huge thanks to our panelists for keeping it honest and real. If nothing else, I hope today reminded you that you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're definitely not the only one who's ever asked, why in the heck, or stronger language, did I start this business? Whether owning a business feels like a blessing or a curse, the truth is, it's both. It's messy, it's meaningful, but it's never boring. But it's also worth it because every risk you take, every lesson you learn, and every problem you solve brings you closer to the version of success that only you can define for yourself. So keep building, keep figuring out, and when in doubt, come back for more real talk. I got a mic and a seat waiting for you. Thank you very much. Please, thanks everyone for being here. We are out.